Jared Frayer, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. We were just chatting about the Worlds this week, man. What'd you think watching the guys out there?
Man, they went out there ready to go, confident, and kind of let it fly. We scored. I think there was something like I think I saw the point spread was like 400 to 97 or something like that. So to go out there and do that at the World Championships is pretty exciting, and we have some serious horsepower. So I'm excited for the future, and the present is pretty damn good as we go. So
Yeah. And were you at the 21 Worlds in Oslo last year?
I was with James out there. So heartbroken for him because he just wrestled Zane not 4 months ago, 5 months ago, and controlled that match. But to see Zane go out there and get a silver was pretty cool.
Yeah. It's just crazy to think that that's not a weight for the Olympics. I mean, everyone knows it, but like, man, you see a weekend like this where everyone's so good, and then you think about guys coming down or coming up. It's like, man, it breaks your heart.
Yeah, just the difference between 163 and 189 for and
Is
not
that what
have
it is?
between Burroughs and Taylor, or excuse me, between Dake and Taylor,
Yeah.
and not have a weight in between is kind of silly, but it
It
is
is
what
what
it
it
is.
is, right? Yeah. Man, well, if we go back to your career, you had a really, long career, both, collegiately, but then also on the international scene. Take us through life before Oklahoma for you. Where'd you grow up, and when did your dream of wrestling start?
Well, my dad was a high school wrestler and wrestled in college at Ball State. Was injured, I think, the first year there, and got to meet a buddy of his on the wrestling team at Ball State, and his whole lifelong dream was to go to Miami and coach wrestling in Miami. So he ended up in Miami with his best friend, and then brought my wife, or excuse me, my mother, from Ball State down there, and started coaching high school wrestling. Was in Miami through kind of the Scarface era. The house got robbed in like 1980 during like the Cuban boat lift. I was two.
No.
Oh yeah, and he moved to Tampa, and that's kind of where they've been at since then. So he was a high school wrestling coach. Had a great career as a high school coach. Was my coach until he pushed me off to a club coach. But yeah, that's where it all began, and my love for it. He made me kind of play different sports. I swam and dove for a while, and was a football player. And but yeah, wrestling was my passion, and here we are.
Who was your club coach?
A guy by the name of Glenn Goodman. He was a couple-time U.S. national team member. He wrestled Oklahoma. I think he would tell you he partied too much in college and flunked out. But then I mean he was number two, number three behind John Smith and Brad Penrith at 25 and 36 kind of through his career. He wrestled up until about I think 88 is when he retired. So great coach, great guy for me to mentor me at that time when I was about a freshman, sophomore in high school, and is a serious attribute to my success.
Hey, that name sounds familiar. Maybe Dustin D'Annunzio.
Yes, he was. He
Saying
was
okay.
same coach, same coach. I worked out with Dustin, when I was young, and Dustin came and did a gap year at Harvard, and it was great, because I was a senior in high school. He was doing a gap year at Harvard in between, I believe, his sophomore and junior years, and he was bringing in Kerry Colott, Sonny Abbey, all these legends to come and work out with him, and I got to kind of jump on his coattails and work out with those guys. So extremely blessed to have that situation, especially that time in my career when Florida wrestling wasn't great, and I needed partners, and definitely propelled me to some college success.
What was Colat like back in those days, man?
Man, he was a wild man. It was great, man. He was in his prime, and man, he was choking me, and he was always one of my. Him and Kendall Cross were kind of my I guess heroes growing up, and so to have him come down and work out with us, I think one of the first days he got there, he got super sunburnt, and it was like spring break time, and yeah, and I think he was out for a workout or two, and he wasn't real happy about that. But yeah, man, just awesome being around Dustin, Glenn Goodman, and then having those guys come down to work out was pretty cool.
Man, every workout story I hear about Colat is just that his intensity level was like 20 out of 10. Like the guy was just relentless.
No doubt, and to be able to pick his brain at that, when I was a high school kid, and he was, and that had to have been like 95, 96. So just after he was winning NCAA titles and being in the world finals. And so pretty neat deal for me to be able to pick his brain. And then I think something like 8 years later, he came back out of retirement. I wrestled him one of his first matches back. So,
Wow. So
uh,
is that how you ended up in Tampa with the striker job? Because you're just from that
yeah,
area?
I'm from that area. I had buddies still working down there, yeah, ended up going back home, and really the only time those 3 years when my kids had grandparents, right around the corner, and family nearby. So it was a great 3 years, much needed, and I'm blessed to have that opportunity to go home and now be back into my passion.
Yeah. No, Paul Glenn's a good friend of mine. He's a striker guy. Gets a
Yeah.
lot of the Iowa guys into the sales thing. So, and I'm in sales myself. I was gonna ask you, like, how did your what was your experience like in sales? Like, what was the transition like?
Well, I was lucky enough to be kind of thrown in with some pretty experienced guys that had some great relationships with some neurosurgeons and orthopedic surgeons, and I was thrown into the spine game. So I kind of got thrown to the top of the food chain, which I was obviously excited about. I'm not. I had my weekends. Those surgeons don't put surgeries on the weekends or on Fridays. So kind of something totally out the box. I remember it was something like 2 or 3 weeks after I had left Oklahoma, and the next thing I know,
Like an OR?
I was in the OR. Yeah, for a big spine case, and I had no idea how I was going to react. And over the 3 years, I saw plenty of kids that were, whether they're med students or someone that wanted to get into the industry, would go down. The smells and the sights, you don't know until you know. And man, it was something to be seen, and to be in a 3 or 4 hour spine surgery where they're kind of filleted open and people are putting screws and rods in. It was intense, and it was great. I can't put a value on what kind of experience it was, and just was happy to be around family and working with great people, and yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome, and it's a lot easier for me to sell Virginia Tech to a 17, 18-year-old than to go and cold call a brain surgeon. Um, but the sales part was definitely the hardest part. Going in there and doing the stuff in the OR was pretty awesome. But yeah, the cold calls were not my forte.
Well, dude, I'm in tech sales, but the medical device sales world, they're known as working insane hours. But it's crazy to think that for you, you were getting more time back by not coaching because you had the weekends free. I mean, how many
100,
weekends a year as a college coach gone? Like,
like two.
yeah.
And I think in 3 years, and working for Striker, I think I was in there one time. It was a kind of someone got an infection and they had to take everything out, right away. So I got open on a Sunday morning or something like that. So, but yeah, it was great. We were right in Tampa Bay. I was on the water. It was nice. But
And
back
how
in the,
does,
back in the game.
yeah. And like, how does it change after you've managed a territory in the sales world, how did it change your approach to recruiting, if any, once you got back into it?
Really, especially now, being able to find outside things to talk about when it comes to wrestling, and that's what sales is, right? Is figuring out something that that you have a common interest in with whoever that person is, and it can't be what you're selling 24/7. It's you got to find that common bond, and right now with recruiting being really a year longer than it has been 5 years from now, where we could only start talking to a kid July going their senior year, it's July their junior year now. You got to find other things that you can bond over besides double legs and single legs. So
Yeah.
so yeah, being able to find that, and these kids on their social media, it's pretty easy to access what they love to do, and then kind of go from there, and hopefully there's something there that fits your institution, and yeah, so it's been great, and I think that was a big thing for me is finding those. It's tough to do when these guys are graduating from med school and trying to figure out what they like to do besides cut people open.
It's funny you say that because man, like I cannot handle blood. And like the fact that those guys are in there as a sales rep in the OR, I couldn't even believe it when they first told me that.
It's unreal. And the sites weren't the bad part. It was the smell. I mean, the
Really?
cauterizing of skin, and it's just that's what
Oh,
really threw me off the first couple months. So
you know Tyler Clark, right? You
yes,
remember him from
yeah, yeah,
Iowa?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I grew up with him, and
Okay.
he was a stud, but he's a rep at striker and has been for a long time. He's probably one of their best reps, but I think he was at Iowa battling Ramos for the spot when you were at Iowa.
Right. Yeah, all those guys, Nate Moore, Matt McDonough.
Yeah,
That was a little weight you right there.
dude, for real. Now, when you got the call by Coach Roby to come to Virginia Tech, what was your reaction?
Um, it was wild because my wife literally a week earlier had said, "Man, it's been 3 years. I just feel like something's coming. Something's telling me that something's coming." And I remember it was a late night in the OR. I was driving home at like 10 o'clock, and I had a voicemail, and didn't know the number, and it was Coach Roby, and so we had a quick talking and kind of went over the pros and cons, and gave him a call back, and pretty much came to the point where it was time to make a visit and see what it was all about. And my wife and I went up there, and we bonded really well with Tony and Jen, his wife. And man, it was a done deal pretty quick. It was pretty much what was nice is 2 weeks before we were here for spring break, because my sister and brother-in-law lived in DC, and so they had cousins. So to sell my two girls on moving away from the grandparents, they knew that their cousins and their aunt and uncle were up here. So made it pretty easy transition. So yeah, 5 years now, going on our 6 year. So it's been quick.
You must have been so excited day one coming from the business world back to coaching.
I really was. It was, I didn't hate what I was doing. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't looking to make a change, and it was totally out of the blue, getting a phone call from him. I had a couple kids I had a little club that I did on Sundays that ended up coming up here to school. And I think one of their dads, I kind of mentioned something to Roby. He's like, just, man, if you can't find anybody, give him a shout, and he isn't looking to get out, but you never know. And so that was kind of the end. Shout out to Mr. Nordstrom for putting that bug in Roby's ear. And yeah, man, I run to work every day. It's a something that I really enjoy doing, and love working with the kids, and the staff is what it's all about. The synergy of the staff right now is pretty awesome with Cody Brewer and Jared Hott. So we're fired up.
Yeah, and you guys have an awesome schedule this year. I mean, some of the teams you wrestle on, it's like, what is it? You got Cornell, you got Missouri.
So we got to Stanford,
Ohio State.
Yeah,
dude,
and then the obvious
wow.
ACC schedule. Yeah.
Yeah.
We try and get these guys battle tested, and we're probably going to lose a duel or two, but it's all about those 3 days in March. And I think in the past, I was doing some stats for some recruits yesterday, and we've been top 11 9 out of the 10 years. So we do our best wrestling back those 3 days in March, and that's where we're that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. No, it's crazy because on Friday I interviewed Kevin Dresser, and he, really kind of rebuilt Virginia Tech. And then just before this, I was talking to Lou Roselli, and he's at Oklahoma, and that's your alma mater. And so it's kind of full circle to have you on now. And just the last thing before we move on from the striker piece, during that 3 years, were you ever like really missing it? Where you were like looking for a coaching job, or you were pretty content and not even considering getting back out?
No, I never did, and I really never. I guess it was pretty funny because right when I decided I was going to get out, it was Monday, or it was January or February, going to that last year. I think it was 2013. Literally, I think West Virginia opened. I think a couple other schools had opened. I think Zeke had just taken the Arizona State job, maybe. So literally the first week I got back to Florida, there was phone call after phone call, and I was just like, man, I can't do this to my wife. I can't do it to the people that I took the job with down here. Thanks, but no thanks. And for me to turn down some of the jobs I was turning down was, and some of the money I was turning down, it was just like, what am I doing? I can't believe I could have made that kind of money, but my word is what all I got. And it is what it is. And that was probably the only time I was like, wow, what did I just do? But the 3 years, at no point did I had a really good little Sunday thing going. We literally getting ready to put down a down payment on a space to start my own club down there, actually get out of sales and start my own club down there. with a kid named Nick Buzakis and his father. We were getting ready to start a club in Tampa. But yeah, then I got the call from Roby and kind of everything put a brakes on, and yeah, it's kind of wild. I never, at no time in those 3 years, I was so fired up to sit back, drink beer, and watch NCAA wrestling, and have my weekends to watch college football and not be at a game, entertaining everyone. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was
So
pretty wild.
so did you leave Oklahoma because of the pay, or was it just you were just a little burnt out?
Yeah, I was just a little burnout. I kind of jumped the job out of Wisconsin because it was I always thought it was my dream job to be the head assistant at my alma mater, and just didn't work out that way, and it was time to move on, and I didn't know that getting out of college wrestling was what I wanted to do, but it was a way out, without kind of skipping a beat for my family. And,
Yeah.
and it ended up being a strong blessing, and being home with my parents and having my girls have grandparents, and just that time of life where the kids are 4 and 5 years old. It's a time you need help, and
Yeah.
it's a big part of their development, and I think it just worked out that way. So yeah, I wasn't per se. It was time to move on, but I wasn't trying to get out. There's no reason I was getting out. It was just time.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's because I was looking at your resume, and I think about any college coach or even any pro coach, wrestling, football, anything, their family, their wife, their kids, they go through a lot with all the moves. I mean, I never moved once in my whole life, and I look at, you had I think it was your first kid at the Olympics, at so 2012 ish, maybe before then, but I mean, that's a whole family experience every time you get a new coaching job, and you guys moved a decent amount.
It is kudos to my wife. She's definitely the rock of the family, and like I said, this is the longest we've been anywhere in our marriage, in our kids' lives. So Blacksburg's a special place for us. It would take a lot to get us out of here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those first couple of years, I mean, we got married. I was at the training center, just getting ready to take a job at Iowa. And then we were at Iowa for like about 9 months. Took a job in Wisconsin, and then, every move was moving up the chain of command. But yeah, for the biggest time in 2008, I was getting out of wrestling. I was going to coach high school wrestling in Florida, and I took a kind of a permanent sub job, and I got a phone call, or I Skyped my wife in 2008 when I was with Doug Schwab at the Olympics. And I said, Tom Brand's offered me a job. I don't want to go to Iowa, but it's something that I needed to tell you. And she said, well, let me pray about it. And like a day and a half later, I'm in a skyscraper in Beijing, and she's like, I think we got to take the Iowa job. And now we're back into wrestling. I never make an Olympic team if I don't go to Iowa. And Tom Brand says, what are you doing? Why are you retired? Just go start wrestling again. And so just so many wild circumstances, and it's just a wrestling. This whole wrestling has changed my life. It's changed my life in more ways than I can even fathom. So
well, plus Metcalf was your nemesis in 2012, and he's the guy at Iowa when you get there. It's like crazy.
True. And
so,
that's why Tom said, I'm wrestling. I'm a strength and conditioning coach, so, and they take that seriously in Iowa. I wore my tennis shoes to practice every day. I couldn't, during the Hawkeye Wrestling Club practice, I would obviously wrestle, but I'm wrestling with Schwab, who's still competing in 2009, and Metcalf obviously winning NCAA titles. And he told me, I remember the day he said it. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You're killing these guys." Well, I kind of may have been killing those guys, but he said, "You're killing these guys. Why aren't you wrestling?" And I said, "I don't know." He's like, "Well, you're going to wrestle." And I said, "All right." So I showed up at the
this
US.
is Tom Brands saying
this is Tom Brands in February. I think he pushed me to wrestle in the US Open. I took 5th or 6th in the US Open. 2 months after, just let's wrestle. And then I ended up losing to Paulson in the 2009 World Team Trials in the finals. So,
and to kind of take people on a little bit of the backdrop of this, so 2002 runner up at Oklahoma, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're on the scene, you're making U.S. national team, never cracked the top one, but you're battling. And in 2008, where were you living before the 2008 Olympics? The OTC?
Yeah. So just to, even back up from there, I went
Yeah.
to, after graduating, I spent a year at Oklahoma just training. I was, kind of almost a personal coach with Tion Ware. Able to work out with him every day, him and Leitner, and got a call from Dustin Nunzio saying, "Hey, the Harvard job's open. We'd like to bring you out." And he was in the business where he was getting his MBA at MIT or something. I don't know, but he's very involved with the program. And so I went out there, and Jesse Jansen's on the team. I just wrestled him in the quarterfinals of the NCAA tournament. Pretty bad dude in his own right. So I had a good workout partner. I was like, let's do it. So from 2003 2006, I was at Harvard 3 years. We had a great run, Coach Weiss and myself, and we had some really good teams, good individual talent. Jesse Jansen won the NCAA tournament, 3 or 4 All Americans. Then I said, Jesse's gone. I need to focus on my training, just focus on my training. And I was doing good. I was 2-3 the whole time I was at Harvard. Went to the training center. And growing up, I was never an Iowa fan, but Terry Brands was there, and I always lost the Iowa guy. I always lost the Iowa guy. I was the better technician. I would be winning, lose the Iowa guy. So I was like, I got to get to the bottom of this. So I'm gonna go train under Terry Brands.
So when do you move out there?
I moved out there 2006. So I'm there for 2 years.
Wow.
2006, 2008. I guess it's probably a year and a half. Anyhow,
How brutal are those workouts?
They were brutal. They were brutal. And I probably did my worst wrestling those years because that's all I had to do was focus on wrestling. And that's not me. I got too much. I need other things going on, whether it's being a dad, coaching, recruiting, for me to do my best at whatever I'm doing. So, but I learned a lot about myself. I learned, what it took to be, mentally ready to be the guy that, just go to deep waters, be able to swim when somebody's trying to drag you deep waters. And that happens a lot in this sport. And then my wife, who was a gymnast at Oklahoma, is from Colorado Springs. She had moved back to Colorado Springs. We never stayed in touch. 2007, while I'm out there, we reconnect. Fireworks, and it was over. So I didn't wrestle very good, but I learned how to compete and be the best version of myself, and then also reconnect with my wife. And so yeah, and then to 2008, I didn't have a great Olympic trials. I had beaten Colot in 2003 or 4, and then he retired, and then I think he came back. I can't remember. I think I lost to Colot
in 08.
Yeah, I think I lost Colot. No, I'm pretty sure it's such a blur.
08 was such a weird trials because you had the other sports there. Like it was like the worst of the rules. It was just a weird time.
It was a weird time. Yeah. And then you had, you guys like Lincoln McRae came. It was just like, it was silly. It was great. And freaking Doug Schwab wrestled his butt off like he always does, and ran through the gauntlet and made the team. And since I was being coached by Terry at the time at the training center, he wanted me as the alternate or the training partner. And so I was in Beijing for 2 weeks. And then that's the whole Tom Brand saga. Terry was going back to coach at Iowa. Tom asked me to be the strength conditioning coach, and my wife said, we got to go to Iowa. I was like, all right, I guess we're going to Iowa.
Wow. So, because that's right when Henry Cejudo's living out there as a young kid, right?
Yep. So yeah, it was me, Henry, Lee Fullhart, Mako, Fichetti. It was a strong crew that was running around the training center. Mola Wall was out there. So really good, strong group. We had a group, we traveled the world, man. I was traveling nonstop. Probably one of the reasons I wasn't as successful, because I was doing a lot more traveling just because I was there.
Where'd you go?
Man, Iran, Russia, Russia multiple times. And it was, I remember they talk about these double tours. I went on a quad tour where I was in 2 different places in Siberia, and then back to Moscow, then down to southern Russia, and then over to Iran. We stayed in Dubai for a little bit and trained. It was just pretty cool. Just pretty cool, cool time in my life where I was getting paid to just wrestle and travel the world. And unfortunately, I wasn't doing my best wrestling. I think I was second in 2007, and then whatever I took at the trials in 2008, which wasn't good.
So before you went to Beijing in like the summer of 2008, though, you're thinking, all right, I'm going to be a high school teacher, I'm going to be a coach, and put down some roots. And so that's the plan. Then you take off for China. Then your missus gets a phone call when you're over there, and that was basically change your whole career trajectory.
Yeah, the bags were packed to the training center. Everything was loaded. Literally 2 or 3 days after I got back, I was heading to Florida. She was finishing up, closing up some things in Colorado, and then she was going to meet me down there. And then, yeah, after this couple Skype calls about the Iowa City job, yeah, we were heading to Hawkeye country. So that's where it all that this whole college wrestling thing got back into play, and then my wrestling career jumped back on track, and eventually making that team in 2012.
So when you finally got to Iowa and you're inside the dark layer of the evil empires, they say, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Hawk fan myself, so I don't really think that, but a lot of people say that, and you know those that time when Terry was at the OTC, you hear a lot of stories about how crazy it was in terms of like him hiding in trees potentially and giving guy like running in the snow risking injury, but just a lot of crazy stuff you hear from that time. How different was Tom than Terry, just from your experiences working around them during that year, or pretty
Um,
similar?
yeah, very similar. I think, Tom is, he definitely is the guy that oversees everything, where Terry is he's a specific guy coach. I mean, when we were at the training center, he was, it was all about getting in our minds and making us tougher. And, he would go to bat for you. I mean, he is, with some of those videos where they're following him and he's, shoving Tolly Thompson out of the way. I mean, that wasn't fake. He's gonna take care of his guys and go to bat every time and fight tooth or nail. And then Tom is just a kind of overseer of the program. So, he's going to be the father that takes care of everybody, and I think does a good job. So it totally different in some aspects, but very similar in a few. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, it was a great opportunity. All the stories are all true. He was fun to be coached by. When I left the program, he kind of cut ties all, which was, it is what it is. But we still get Christmas cards and send Christmas cards to Tom Brands, and
Do
we'll always,
you?
always be a friend and a mentor, I guess. And so yeah.
Wow. So you get there, and then do you have a relationship with Metcalf before you get there?
Before I get to Iowa, no, not at all.
So is
It
he
was
just coming on at this time?
He is, well, yeah, he's just coming back from his, so he's kind of full circle again.
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech, yes. So yeah, he had come to Iowa City from Virginia Tech, and I think that was the year after he kind of couldn't do anything for a year. So
Right.
he was coming back fired up. He spent a year just training and almost, I guess, a second red shirt, pretty much. But so he was spitting fire and wrestling hard, and I was his coach, so it was like, the dude he's just like, you see, I mean, he would do anything that I asked him to, and to be able to help him in any way I could, technique wise, and I was a strength and conditioning coach, and I was putting those guys through lifts every single day. Him and Slayton and all those guys, that whole group, Ketty. Gosh, it was a great. McDonough was a nut job, just wanting to work out every second of the day. So it was an awesome group to be a part of, and a great time to be there in those 9 months. And so it was fun, and Metcalf was the leader of them all.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much hype around him when he came out finally, and I mean, Slayton was like the biggest 133 pounder I can remember. I mean, he was massive. And then you go to Wisconsin, work with another stud from that era, Andrew Howe, and Donnie Pritzloff, I'm sure. What was that experience like?
It was great, man. Madison's an awesome town, easy sell. They kind of gave me the recruiting for that. It was just fun, man. We got some great recruits when we were there. Got working with Andrew Howe and Rochelle and Brandvold and Rutt. And I mean, it was a great. I think we were 8-10 dual meet wise, and then we took fourth in the country. So it was really cool. I'd always wanted to work with Donnie Pritzloff. We were good friends throughout our years on Team USA, and then being able to work with him on staff, we became really really tight. So it was a dream come true. Work with some studs. Great city to recruit to. Great school.
Yeah.
it was a fun. I think we were there 2.5 years, and my first daughter was born in Madison. So that's where kind of the whole family life began, and so yeah, it was pretty cool.
It's a great town.
Yeah.
And how did becoming a parent impact the way you looked at competition and like wins and losses?
Um, more, I guess, more opportunity driven. Especially my oldest has Down syndrome. She's a spitfire, just an awesome gal. But there's gonna be a lot of opportunities that she will not have and she'll never have. And for me, especially at that time in my career where I would lose my mind over, getting feeling like I got screwed over, or whatever the case may be, whether it was wrestling or coaching. Um, for her to get those type of opportunities, or for me to get those opportunities and feel like I was cheated or robbed, had nothing to do with the process of becoming a better man and better coach and a better wrestler. So that her, going through that whole, her the pregnancy, finding out early, was just it was a a heartbreaking scenario, one where you had to kind of go through the process of kind of like the grieving a little bit, and then in moving on, and then figuring out, man, this is going to be a wonderful blessing in my life, and learning about Down syndrome, learning about kids that are have disabilities, and just the joys that come along with it, and then the opportunities that my younger daughter has now, and
Yeah.
I have that I can't take for granted.
Did you know before your first daughter was born the condition?
We did. We went through that process, and it's funny. I remember Donnie and I leaving Alex Derringer's house, and she calls, and we're getting on the interstate, and he pulls over, and she tells me, and it was just like just such a so many of those little things that are just so vivid in your mind, and where you're at, and what. But yeah, it was.
Wow. So you
We
didn't you
knew.
you just found out over a phone call and you're leaving.
Yeah, yeah. So, and we would, Alex was, I think, 2 or 3 hours down the road. So I was going to be home soon, but she had just gotten the results, and it was a pretty wild time, especially with our first daughter, and the questions that you don't know, and don't realize the community of people that are surrounding you, and just the love and support, and then the community of families with children with Down syndrome. It's just like it's pretty wild. So yeah, it's a
So it's like you have like the wrestling circle, then you have this other kind of support group of parents who are going through the same thing. That's interesting.
100%. And then my wife is such an advocate for her, and does such a great job, when I can't be there. And so yeah, she's my best friend. The dressing room's her favorite place. We were up in the dressing room last night, and one of the guys was like, "This is like Disney World for her," and so I'm like, "Yeah, it is." So
Wow, that's
she's
awesome.
yeah, so she's 11 years old, and doing great, and just started sixth grade. So life is good in Blacksburg, and Chloe is a happy girl.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that. How long after your first daughter's birth until the 2012 trials?
She is January 2012, so that was 2011. So she was, I guess, a year and a half. Um,
Wow.
a year and a half when the trials came around in April of 2012.
Did you
So
take 2011 off?
I did. I did. That was after 2010 Metcalf finals. It was just, like you said, it was a bad era of wrestling. There's a lot of ball grabs and high crotches, and so so yeah, I lost in three to Metcalf. Those were only two matches I ever lost to him, and I just needed a refresh. I needed it to get out of the sport, and just coach, and the competitive side I needed. And I kind of always knew I was going to come back, but I still didn't. The door wasn't closed, but it was pretty closed.
Yeah.
Um, and then after Chloe, and being around her for a couple months, I was just like, what am I doing? I got this opportunity, and she would die for this in 20 years. So strapping back on, and yeah, it was great.
Who was your coach taking you to the trials? Like, who was in your corner for that?
Michael Leitner and Jameel Kelly. Jameel Kelly was one of my, he the run he went on in 2004. I think I was fourth that year, and he had beaten Lawrence in 2004, and just we became really good friends. He was always a cowboy, but for me and him, we still talk, every week. even though that he's at UNC now, so technically a rival, but still just a great friend, great man, great technician, and always brought the best out of me. So it's Leitner, him, and Pritzloff were kind of my guys, and still are. So
Man, and that, I mean, you as you mentioned all these guys, it just reminds me 65 kg has and will always be, in my opinion, the toughest weight class. I mean, look at like Jamil, his run to even make the team in 03, the amount of guys he knocks off, then he goes and gets a medal. It's like, 65 is just so deep. Even this weekend watching, it's like you got Haji, you got the Cuban, you got Bajrang, it's like, man, there's so many good guys at 65. I'm sure it's been that way for a long, long time.
and then the random Iranian wins it, right? He went
Right.
one of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was it's always been awesome. And just think of Jamil and I, we always, we go down the how our dads used to talk back in the day. Back in the day, and I think it was the 2003 Open. There were something like 32 NCAA titles in the weight class, and it was mind boggling. There's 32 NCAA titles. Him and I weren't one of them, and but just to see the amount of experience, and that was like when McElravy and all the Bill Zadek, the list was just ridiculous. The Terrapellis, and list goes on and on. So.
And then in 2006, Bill Zadek kind of comes from nowhere, quote unquote, and he wins the world title. And he was like, maybe fifth or fourth, I think, either the year before or in 04. It's like,
yeah,
that's how deep. I mean, again, you got Jamil getting second at the Olympics, Bill being a world champ 2 years later. I mean, you were still in the mix in 06, I'm sure, right? When
yeah,
Bill...
I lost to Bill in the finals.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I lost to Bill. Leitner lost to Mike. So we both went over to China as like the alternates, and hung out in China for 2 weeks. So it was.
It's crazy that Zadek connection, because I vividly remember when Percival upset Zadek at the Nationals in 02, I think, in Albany, because the ESPN was following them that year, and I lived in the Quad Cities, like an hour from Iowa City, and so when they released the season on ESPN and Zadek lost, like I'll never forget, like his dad, like, and his mom, it was intense. And looking back now, I'm like, oh shit, 02, you beat Percival in the semis to go to the finals. Yeah.
Yep.
Wild, man.
It's pretty wild. I've known Mike since we were 6 years old. We go to every single AAU tournament. We're in the finals every year wrestling. So we wrestled when I think we were like 6, and then when we were like 29 at the New York AC tournament. So it's pretty wild.
Wow. Yeah. I just want to hit on one more thing from your competitive career, then we'll focus on kind of current events here with Virginia Tech. When you're at the trials in 12, you're at Carver. The house, it might as well be the house of Metcalf at that point. The guy was really big, and you come into that, you're in the tunnel. Like, where are you thinking, 5 minutes out from that match? Are you someone who's like has a set routine, or are you just trying to stay empty mind?
I have a pretty set routine. That weekend was so, I was so just dialed in. I knew, I was the 5th seed coming in, and I just felt good the whole weekend. It was I just knew that this was my path. This was the plan. And just stayed focused and in the moment. So, going out there, Metcalf, I think it was the 2 seed. I think I'd wrestled Tion in the semifinals. He was the 1 seed. He had beaten him the year before. But yeah, going out there, it was fun because I knew those hallways. They had done some renovations, but for the most part, I knew the fans. I knew what I was getting into. I'd wrestled Brent so many times, practice room, in the competition arena, so I knew what was coming. And I knew I just had to stay focused and wrestle and be willing to lay it on the line when it was needed. And I had great training. I knew. I was healthy. So yeah, it was a very calming feeling. I don't know what it was or what it meant, but if I had that my whole career, I don't know, I would have been really hard to beat. And it was just a lot of prayer, a lot of, visualization throughout those couple of years leading up to it. And I think all those losses and it had built me to the man I am today. And at that moment, it built me into the wrestler that wasn't going to lose that night. So it was awesome. Brent's, the competitor of all competitors, and it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to do it in that arena. especially in front of a packed house like it was. And
Yeah. So you were big on visualization during those years?
yeah, yeah. I was 33 years old, so it's I had to do something. It wasn't just going to be my keen smile and good looks. I had to, but no, it was a lot of visualization. Terry was big on that at the training center, and we did a lot of that. Seeing yourself, journaling, all that good stuff. So I'd seen it a million times, especially in Carver Hawkeye. I'd experienced some big time duels, so I knew the environment I was going into, and I knew it was going to be. There was no doubt in my mind I was going to be wrestling Brent Metcalf. That night in the finals of the trials.
And would you visualize like just kind of randomly when you were driving, or would you take like 10, 20 minutes and like do it like a routine every day?
Yeah, after practice, I'd go find a corner in the restroom and do it in the practice room. So I remember doing that in the corner at Oklahoma, and it was something that I did. It was routine, something that whether it was a cardio workout or wrestling workout, I went and saw 2 or 3 matches every single day.
Wow, man. So you'd seen it so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're working with this new crop of young specimens. You got Mickey Lewis and Andonian. Like, man, he took out my guy Gomez, but man, he's just so fun to watch, man. I mean, what's it been like watching him develop over the years?
It's pretty special. He's one of my guys, and especially it's just to see this, I would say. So his sophomore year probably had all the talent to do just as well as he did last year, but just wasn't, mentally wasn't bought into how successful he could be. Never felt like he did the work outside the room to be able to be great on the biggest stage. But to see the jump of him knowing how good he was, the NCAA tournament in St. Louis to the NCAA tournament of what was it last year? Detroit. And he knew that, just like I was talking about the Olympic trials, he knew that he was supposed to be in that moment. And we all knew that, but unless you believe it as the competitor, it's hard to make those jumps. So yeah, man, him being around him since he came in here as a 17-year-old, didn't turn 18 till the second semester of his
Wow.
freshman year. He's a young guy, and just to see the jumps that he's made, in his life, he a lot of times in his life, his life is like how he wrestles. It's all over the place. So to get him to really focus, and it takes some leading, and he is all about being led, and that's that takes some big responsibility on his part, and so it's been fun doing that. Same thing with Mikhail Lewis. It's so fun to see him as a true freshman and where he is now, and just his life is a whole different life, and the way he's driven and focused, and how well he's done in the classroom, and on the wrestling mat, and his life in general. It's so cool to see, and I think these guys are made the right decisions to come here, and in that part, us being able to keep them individualized and lead them, and just become great men, and we're just excited about that part. And there's a whole bunch of guys behind them they're looking to do the same type of things.
Yeah, and it's like, man, you look at those guys and how deep your team is, and you just the strength of the ACC, and then the recruiting advantage of Blacksburg. I heard it's just an amazing place. Like, it's like super unique.
It is. It's a great place. We're right in the Appalachian Mountains. Got all kinds of cool hikes and stuff around us. World class fishing, muskie and smallmouth bass, and then the athletic department is a big deal. It's fun to have. We'll have three sets of recruits these last 3 weekends. So we're into our kind of last group coming up Thursday night for the West Virginia game. So kind of got this down pat, and just being able to show these guys what it is, our new facilities that we have going on in our dining halls and dorms and wrestling facilities. It's neat. The resources we have here are second to none. The department believes in us, takes care of us, and we just want to keep building this into the monster it should be. And I think we're right there, pushing to the next level. Top 10 isn't what we want anymore. We want to bring back trophies every single year.
And you said your new facilities. Did you guys just get a new locker room, an updated to the room?
We did. We did a bunch of renovations in our lounges, coaches' offices, our locker rooms, the boys and the coaches, and then
Mm-hmm.
a new recovery center with a bunch of cold baths and sauna and all that good stuff. So, and then
Nice.
we got a brand new dining hall right next door, which is just student athletes. So pretty sweet setup, and especially during college football season this time of year, where the leagues are starting to change. It's a beautiful scene.
And what's the workout look like for your guys now? Are they in like structured workouts like preseason, or do you
We're
kind of let them?
just getting into that. So most of it up till now has been lifting, runs, a little bit of technique, mostly individual work. This afternoon will be our first structured wrestling workout. After we had a lift this morning, and then this afternoon we'll have our first workout together. As a team, going through the same type of drills and that type of stuff. So looking forward to that. Like I said, last group of recruits coming through this weekend, and then really start to buckle down.
Awesome, man. Well, it's going to be fun to watch this year. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and I just can't wait for your guys' schedule. I mean, like I said, Ohio State November 11th, Missouri December 11th, then Cornell's coming in. So you guys are not scared of competition, and it's going to be awesome. We should nothing but the best this season, Coach. Thanks again for coming on.
Ryan, appreciate it, man. This hour flew by. I appreciate
Yeah.
all your time.
Yeah, no problem, man. Take care.